Today on Quest, actress, philosopher, and spiritualist Elise Avellan returns to the podcast. Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hello everyone, I'm your host, Todd Fischer, and this is Quest. For those of you that might be new listeners, let me tell you a little about me. I'm the founder of Metacortex and the author of the best-selling book, Metacortex, The Grand Design. I'm a philosopher, a theorist, a metaphysicist. I'm a perpetual pupil of theology, and I'm an expert in comparative religious study. I've also extensively researched the mind-body connection, anatomy, and physiology. I documented over 300 case studies while researching my book, all from a scientific perspective, with cases that ranged from near-death and out-of-body experiences to possession to past life experiences, as well as the metaphysical, the paranormal, and other unexplained cases of a spiritual nature. This podcast will bring you some of those astonishing stories, and in some cases by the people that actually lived them. From time to time, I'll be talking about important, perhaps even controversial issues from both spiritual and scientific points of view. The world we live in is ever-changing, and there's often a conflict between spirituality and science, and I wanted to bring you this podcast to balance that equation. It will show you how we know what we know, and there's still so much we don't know. For me, curiosity is part of what makes us human. It's the joy of discovery. It's what drives us. It's our quest. On today's quest, my good friend Elise Avellan returns to the podcast. We reflect on all the events that have happened since our interview in February. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Elise. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Todd. Thank you so much for having me again.
You are my only guest I've had back twice in a season.
I'm so honored. I'm glad that you enjoyed the conversation so much. You want more?
We could have probably broke the first podcast up into 2 episodes. It went so long. But
it was a long conversation, yeah.
It's the end of the year. Right now, it's at the time we're recording this, it's November 14th, and this will come out late in December. So there's still a lot of news that's probably going to happen between now and then. But
yes.
I always we get into these conversational things. I don't really have much of a script I'm going off of when I talk to you, because our conversations are always so good anyways. Even when we're just texting, it seems like we always get into something really cool. And I thought, I've got to have Elise come back, because when we actually recorded earlier in the year, the biggest news story was Harvey Weinstein, of which you shared your Harvey Weinstein stories with me, right? So yes. I figure let's pick up where we left off, how the world completely changed and went off the rails since then.
Oh my goodness. It's hard to believe. I feel like all of us thought that the craziest thing about this year was going to be Tiger King back in January when it came out on Netflix, and then everything else happened. So, yeah.
It was so weird, because Weinstein and Epstein, they were like the top news stories, and now it's 1,000 more people have died every day.
I know.
It's unbelievable. But so when we recorded, I was trying to think back, we recorded in March or April, somewhere around there, and then your episode came out in June. So for those of you who don't know who Elise is, you can go back to that podcast and listen to it, because she's been all over the place. She's a very popular actress. She's a photographer. She does so many things. She's so great. And I always like to have her as a guest. So let's kind of pick up where we left off. What do you think? So
let's start with Weinstein and Epstein. Is justice
Okay.
served at this point?
Oh man, I have no idea what is actually happening with them. We get so many different stories on the news, and especially this year, I feel like it's been more confirmed to me. And I am a total conspiracy theorist, so I just feel very like, what are the news? I don't really know if what's being said about them is exactly as it's being depicted, or whether they're facing. I mean, I guess Epstein supposedly is
Epstein's
dead.
dead, so I guess justice is
Yeah,
served
so I guess
there.
you could say that he's yeah. And Weinstein, I don't know. Right now I think it's about figuring out how to get the climate and culture around someone like him to accept that they allowed this to happen. And that's the biggest thing that you would think. I think when justice being served, I think that when we look at someone like that and all the darkness and the stories coming out that finally are surfacing, you have to think about what allowed it to happen, and everybody around him that knew and allowed it to happen, and how do we keep that from happening. And I think that really would be the justice served, not necessarily punishing him, but avoiding climates like that to continue. And so people don't go to a workspace in which they will be sexually taken advantage of, or in any way taken advantage of, by the top dog of the place. And that anybody in the place, in the workspace, will feel strong enough to hold accountable the top dog and the organization. And I mean, we've seen it everywhere. A few years ago, it was in gymnastics. And, it's the time to find out about the darkness, our darkness, and to bring it to the light, transmute it, and change it.
Weinstein obviously will never see the light of day again. Once, he'll never live long enough to serve out his sentence in New York, and they still have to put him on trial and convict him in California. So regardless, we won't hear from him again.
Right.
And I get what you're saying about, that culture in Hollywood. Weinstein wasn't the only one. There's still people out there.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that it's been terrifying for most people who played like him, who are just like, oh my goodness, what is gonna happen now? Like, I'm going down, Everybody's probably just waiting.
Let me ask you this: with Epstein, I think certainly there was enough evidence to support in the public's eye that this man was guilty of the indecencies that he did.
Mm-hmm.
But dying in prison, was it still, and there's a conspiracy behind that, how that even happened, how this guy got murdered in prison. But
they say he got murdered. They said they allowed him to kill himself. But also, I think, well, ask me a question.
Well, was he owed a trial though? That's the thing. Was he owed a trial still to be able to prove that he was innocent?
I think everybody needs a trial to whatever they're being trial for, whatever they're being told they did. They deserve a trial, and moreover, we deserve that trial, because this did not happen. Like, again, I was saying, this did not happen just by one man. This was a huge map and climate of allowance between hundreds of people. This is like his clients were paying him to essentially prostitute a bunch of young girls to them, and they paid for his lifestyle. They made him a billionaire, and he was able to get away with a lot of it because he was being funded by all his clients who wanted these girls, and probably men too, to be available sexually to them. So I think that not only he was owed a trial, everyone else in the world who was victimized by those stories and want an explanation are owed a trial. And the issue is that probably if he wasn't murdered, if he killed himself, either way, it was very much allowed by those very rich clients who are probably, I mean, we hear all the time about corrupt justice systems. The corruption is everywhere, and clients that are into pedophilia are everywhere. And and they're in all kinds of industries, and they have ins on all kinds of industries. So it wouldn't surprise me if, you know, it would have been very bad for a lot of people if he had gotten through an entire trial.
Yeah.
And the same goes with Ghislaine. You know, apparently they got, I think that's how you say her name, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah.
I think they
yeah.
have her, and I don't know if they caught her when they said they caught her, or when they said they caught her was when they went public with it. But they had her many months before when they said she had disappeared, and they were just interrogating her and getting a bigger, kind of like putting the map together of who else is in this information. And once you go public with like, okay, we caught her, is when everyone in the world is allowed to know that now they're gonna get information on her, but actually they've gotten information on her months before. When I think about, like, I mean, I watch a lot of like the CIA movies and like all these CIA movies and like crime things, and I think, okay, if we can write a movie and a show about intelligent agencies and be that clever in a movie, then we certainly are way past it in real life. And I don't think that we would be so, I don't know, so wishy-washy or flaky with our justice system or trials, or even the way that we allowed information to go on or not go on in real life. I think that I think we have an intelligent agency that knows exactly what they're doing and what they're allowing or not. We always find out, like, for example, there's like a whole conversation about some things happening before 9/11, apparently, that were like leading up to 9/11, that could, and other catastrophes that have happened, that could have, that kind of were hinting at something happening. And the intelligence agencies knew about it, but they didn't want to jeopardize finding out more information, so they couldn't get involved or make a big fuss, and then the event happens. And I feel like that happens more than we think, and it's mostly to catch bigger dogs or to follow a thread. And I don't think it's wrong. I just think it's a way that we know how to do things, but it's definitely always, there's more room for improvement. And I think that there'll always be more casualties if we're not thinking about just like following the top dog. I think that we need to just like think of the good of all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was certainly a very weird beginning to the year. And as we started to see, the Weinstein conviction and Epstein gets murdered, then we start to hear about this strange coronavirus, which at first I think everyone thought this will probably be nothing. Of course, it's another weird bird flu that everyone's going to have, and it'll just be the thing that scares us through the winter. But it became a big deal. It became a really big thing, and people started dying from it. Hospitals were filled.
It's been a tragedy in the world.
The lockdowns happened. So tell me, how was your summer with COVID? Because you're in Austin. How was it in the South?
I'm in Austin. It was pretty shut down pretty quickly here. I mean, people didn't take it people were kind of laissez-faire about it. It was, they were taking it a little too lightly. We had one of the highest numbers in the country of cases, and now it's going up again. We were at 100 a day, and I think we're at 200 now and going up because it's getting colder. But yeah, for me it was slow. I mean, work shut down for me, and then I had to find more work, and I'm good where I am now, but it's just been like a change of lifestyle, which we've all had to adjust. And I don't really know what to believe. Honestly, I'm trying to be as decent and considering as possible, and I wear my mask and I respect the rules, but I don't really know what to believe. I don't want to get it. I haven't gotten it. A few of my friends have tested positive and have had to quarantine and heal. A few of people I know, family of friends, have died of COVID apparently. So it's been a trial. It's been crazy.
And mentally, how have you held up through it? Did you keep up with your normal lifestyle? Were you still, when things were bad in lockdown, we couldn't go anywhere, were you still exercising and keeping your mind straight, or did you fall into any kind of depression?
It's interesting. I found a lot of freedom in it. I found that the slowing down and the not going so fast as the world expects us to go was more of my style. It was like the world slowed down, and I was like, this is kind of how I want things to be, but not because we're in a tragedy that is shutting us down economically and health-wise. I just want the world not to run so fast and expect so much out of all of us all the time just so that we can survive. Like the fact that we just had to just play in our circle and like walk in our neighborhoods and get to know our neighbors and work on our homes, like it just slowed me down. And instead of depressing me, it just made me tap in. I got into meditation. I started really deeply meditating. Instead of like 3-minute meditations, I started doing 45 minutes, like just sitting down and really focusing. And I started doing yoga more. I haven't like stayed steadily with it, but I definitely developed a strong practice, and I feel more calm, honestly, at the end of this year, like now, than I did in the beginning of the year, thinking about what was expected of me for 2020, like what I think the world and my family and my friends and like at my age I should be doing. You know what I mean? Like I have the pressure. I don't know. I feel like coronavirus and the pandemic, like this pandemic really showed me that life can be slower and that I can take my time. And, in spite of the tragedy, things can go a little slower, and it's okay.
Do you think COVID is like a plague? Is this a biblical thing? Is this
that's very interesting.
Is this environmental? Is this a time frame for like a spiritual divide where we're supposed to achieve something else after this? Like, what do you think the point of this is?
Well, I'm a believer in that. Everything happens for a reason, and that's such a blanket thing to say in general, but in a sense I do understand and believe that beliefs, we find what we want to believe. If we believe in something, we're going to find evidence of it. So I'm trying to be a critical thinker more about my beliefs, but still I don't like to separate what we can study and understand scientifically from our concept of understanding it spiritually. I think that everything that happens to us, absolutely everything we experience is spiritual, whether we understand it or can prove it or put science to it or not. We are spiritual beings. We can prove it because we understand quantum physics now. And we have this ability to expand our consciousness and connect to many different things, each other, and even develop those abilities, our psychic abilities to connect in different ways that we didn't know how to before. So I do think that what is happening right now in the world is a spiritual awakening of sorts, that definitely has been prophesied, not only in the Bible, but in many other different religions and many other different tribes. And we have just yet to observe more of that in our awakening. This whole year, there was the concept of the ascension, the great awakening, even the hashtag got shut down by Facebook and Instagram because it's revolutionizing people in the concept of like, we are all waking up. We're waking up to the fact that we're all connected, that our priorities are not with each other's hearts, and that it's not serving us as a whole, that regardless of country lines are just lines we drew for political purpose, but it doesn't separate a giant virus that can kill us all. And resources are for everyone, in spite of who is saying is theirs. And all of that is like part of our awakening. We are all connected, and it's taken a world pandemic for us to find out that it doesn't matter what we do. In like less than a month, everyone in the world can have the same exact virus. It's so weird. Like it happened. Maybe the first cases of corona were not last November in China, but by February, the whole world had it. Literally everybody in the world was testing positive. So I think that we can't really separate ourselves anymore. This has been the year of seeing how we are connected and that we need to consider each other.
It's interesting because biblically speaking, those moments of great spiritual awakening came from extraordinary events.
Yeah.
And these were things like a great flood or some other type of catastrophe or things being delivered from angels, or things that were unexplainable to the humans that were living on the planet. Yes. And these were times when, look, things have to change or we will have another Sodom and Gomorrah kind of situation. This is how the Old Testament worked for a long time. And the thing is that they're still agents of these things. So an agent of something isn't necessarily a person delivering something, but it's an agent of good or evil in a lot of ways.
And an agent for change. I think what we do with it could be evil or good.
This whole coronavirus could have been it could have kind of materialized from nature as a biblical style plague for a reason, or it could have been manufactured by a man that released it into the world, also acting as an agent on a behalf. And that's the way systematic change happens.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, I mean, I guess it matters if somebody's doing something that is, will be terrible for the world, but I don't, and I'm going to sound a little woo-woo here, but I do believe in source, what we call God. I do believe that there's nothing that can exist without its awareness of it. And I say this with my own authority because I've had, like, and I talked about it in that last episode, I've had these very strange things happen to me, like what others would consider like their burning bush, right? Like, I've experienced like inexplainable things that can be considered something like the burning bush for Moses. And I'm certain in my heart that even if it was someone who manufactured this disease who ended up having an experience of this sort of like, I will do this harm, like I'm gonna get the whole world sick, it's still a spiritual appointment, because there is nothing that will happen to this many people that is not for all of us. And just like for the individual, if you have a car wreck and let's say your family dies, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But let's say you're in a wreck, your family dies, and you're like, holy shit, this is a fucking disgrace. Like my life is over. And it's like, no, actually you survived it. And here is your next lesson in life, like letting go and detachment. And, what is the blessing here? You came to expand who you are in this experience, and everything that quote unquote happens to you is not actually happening to you. It's a spiritual appointment for your soul to expand. Can you say yes and say thank you, and I'm here and I'm expanding? And I think it has to do with our relation to death as well. We have such a fear of death. Other cultures don't, and they can process death differently, and they can accept horrible things as a bigger blessings than we do, because we're always running away from death. And so it's such a tragedy that we can't see things, ugly things, as beautiful lessons until, oh my gosh, it could cost our lives. We could be completely victimized and degraded by one event and our entire lives, because we feel totally like the rug was pulled under our feet, instead of we were lifted into an experience and an opportunity for expansion.
It's interesting because I believe in an alignment scale of people in terms of where people fall in good or evil. And I think that good and evil is really kind of subject to perception.
Yes.
And, the nicest person in the world that still has an enemy somewhere. And you'll think, how could this person, the nicest Boy Scout I've ever met, like, how could this person have someone that doesn't like him? Because that's the way this is good and evil is subject to perception. It's not black or white. Right. And I feel like many times when we get these types of plagues, it's for a reason. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to cull 1 million human beings. Personally, this sounds macabre to say, but I feel like a huge source of our world's problems today is we are already overpopulated on this planet. Mm-hmm. And we're destined to hit even higher numbers in 2 decades, way beyond where we're at now. We're already busting at the seams. And because of this mass amount of people, already these 7 billion people on the planet, we have environmental issues, we have resource issues, we have food issues, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And now we've lost 1 million people from COVID. And a lot of people look at it as a terrible thing. We got to find a cure for this, but it might be nature's way of kind of culling people to slow down
balance.
Our inevitable extinction. Because imagine in 20 years when we hit 50 billion people.
Right.
There will be...
what's interesting. So go ahead.
No, I was...
No, please, you were finished.
Well, when the world shut down over the summer, NASA did a lot of studies about how much quieter the Earth was, how much less pollution there was. And if you needed proof to show how big of cockroaches we are as human beings, just look at those studies to show what we do on a daily basis to destroy our planet we live on. The only one we have to live on. We can't go to Mars. And Elon Musk says, we'll go to Mars, we'll go live there. No. We're in a perfectly habitable place right now.
Yeah,
we just
like
need
why?
Yeah.
And
I'm a little, my needle always points a little bit negative. I don't have a lot of faith in the human race. And I've used this example before in my podcast. It took the state of California 5 years to get rid of straws, right? And in order to do that, they had to have people lobby the government for it. And then the government had to put together these pit teams to explore what would happen.
That.
Yeah.
Why is it so freaking long?
Exactly. And then they had to talk to the companies that made straws because they didn't want people to lose jobs. And then they had to, they had all these things that they had to do. They had to do community studies. Will the public want to drink out of a glass, or what's an alternative for a straw? And you can get them in bamboo. So finally they passed the law, no more plastic straws in California. Only California, 5 years. And it's only California. And it's not even the biggest problem with plastics. So it took 5 years for one corner of the world to just do away with straws. And you're telling me you want to go and get rid of plastic all over the planet? You're never going to get people on board with this stuff.
Yeah. It's a disconnection from ourselves, Todd, because it's not, as we're talking about the overpopulation of the earth, you reminded me of a study that I heard from my Tantra coach when I lived in Tulum, Mexico. And she was describing, I'm trying to remember exactly how it went, the conversation, but she was describing like what happens when people are very connected to their bodies and their cycles. And when people are very well educated about their connection to the earth, their connection to their bodies, their energy, their chakras, how to honor, how to use their energy properly. For example, understanding your human design profile, which I would love to talk more about, which I just found online. Anyway, when you are connected to yourself, truly connected to the wisdom of your body, and you know what it needs, you can really understand where another is happening, what's happening with another, what's happening with the earth. And even like making love, you would know, you would be completely aware because of that education, intuitive education, and personal power, that when you actually want to make love and allow a child to come through, versus make sure to naturally keep yourself from getting pregnant over and over and over. I think that lack of connection that every individual, because of their class, because of their ability, they don't have access to education like this, they don't have access to knowledge and wisdom, and they're just like barely making ends meet. They were like, horrible things happened to them as children. They have no access to healing or therapy to make better decisions as adults. All they're going by is their instinct, because it's the only thing that brings them pleasure, and they're just getting pregnant over and over and over and not thinking about it. And they're just like, well, fuck it, the government will pay me a bigger check the more children I have. Just in general, I think that what we don't have is a system that starts from zero, from scratch, where we are empowering the individual to know how to truly be self-reliant and intuitive and have personal power. Because if you do that, then a lot of the systems that we have, like big pharma and food and entertainment, would dramatically change. And it's changing very slowly, like you're saying with the straws, or the documentaries about awareness, or even our conversation about what's corrupt, or even Epstein going down and Weinstein going down. But it's gonna take this desire. It has to be a mass desire to to be personally empowered. Every individual needs to want to wake up and say, I want to know what my body needs, what my heart desires. I want to feel totally well, okay, and I want the best for every brother and sister out there. And until that is a true desire in everyone's hearts, we're just going to be these disempowered small cells pointing fingers at each other for our miseries.
Right.
And then, and so we won't pass along stress. We won't, the change won't happen because it's not happening within us.
Yeah. It's hard enough to keep our country together, much less look toward developing nations or larger countries with political structures that aren't the same as ours. And, environmentalists act like they want to police the world in a way. And that's never going to happen.
Policing is not going to help.
Yeah. And then, we have to kind of look to the individual in the hopes that we might improve. After, COVID, we had Black Lives Matter. There, I think police killings all over the country made the news, and we had a lot of protests and riots and all kinds of things that happened after that. And then we had murder hornets everyone was scared of. And then,
oh my God. And then the election.
Yeah. And then and we already knew it was going to be a weird year because of elections. And at the time we're recording this podcast, there's still a whole lot of gray areas in this whole election.
Yes.
And, it's pretty obvious that Biden has won this election, but President Trump hasn't conceded yet. And there's a lot of issues in certain states with things. And
which doesn't surprise me because of who he's shown himself to be. I mean, even before he was president, we've known he's Chinese.
Yeah. So at the time this podcast airs, we still won't have Biden inaugurated yet. So let's call him president when the ink is dry on this thing, because any number of things could happen in this next 3 months, and you just never know. I mean, the way this is playing out is like a crazy soap opera. And if people think that Trump is going to leave without kicking and screaming, I think you might not have seen, a desperate man will do anything. And, you just never know. He might start a war. We might be in World War III and he won't leave office. Like, he could find some loophole in the Supreme Court. Like, who knows where this is all going to go before it's all over with.
Todd, I saw it happening in my country, in Venezuela, I saw my mother even voted for Chavez, and he became a dictator. He just decided when it was time for him to leave office, he was like, no, I'm not. And there were no checks and balances, and he started a civil war, and then he didn't leave office. He freaking died in office. He died as a president of cancer, I think it's because of all the shit he did. But then he appointed somebody else that was like less educated than him for the job.
And I was hoping you would bring that up, because I wanted to use that as an example, because people don't realize, I think Karl Marx said it best when he said, democracy and communism will never work because neither are strict enough. And I've always thought that was really interesting, because there was enough crack in the foundation where you could still seize some level of control, or it would destroy itself. That's the way it works. Of course.
And it's not, it lacks transparency. And
I think the only thing that would keep Trump from actually doing that and being a dictator is that I don't believe his relationship with the military is as strong as it would need to be. And I think a president who has a great relationship with their military could potentially have a coup, remove everyone from office, become a dictator. But that's the way that has to happen. That's the way that has to happen. Exactly. And if we go back 50 years and we looked at the Eisenhowers that were presidents and things like that, they might have been able to do things like that. But we don't really have the former military guys that are running for president anymore. In fact, we don't even want politicians as presidents anymore. We want other people. Anyone else should run. George Clooney should run for president before we want to vote for a politician,
Right, yeah. I mean, we want people who are, citizens, civilians, not that they're not the presidents, but if you're so interested in politics and you've been in it, I don't know, it's just like, now I lack trust in that. I almost like, I'm much more trusting of someone who has done something completely different her whole life, and they just decide to, because of what's happening in the country, to lead it, But I'm also a believer that what we need is like more transparency and less like single leaderships. This whole like winner takes all election instead of a ranking system. We should have a ranking system of elections. Like the winner takes all policy doesn't work. I watched an episode of what's it called? This Hassan Minaj Patriot Act on Netflix. I don't know if you watched it. It's brilliant. Patriot Act. You have to watch it. It's great. So one of his episodes is on the election, and like the fact that our elections are winner takes all versus ranking system, which means more like winner takes all is just like a two-party, and then like the winner takes all, they win the presidency. But the ranking system counts the votes as in like how many people got which vote and how many votes they got each. And so they kind of like giving like the gold, silver, and bronze medal, you know? It's like kind of like that. It's more fair to how we feel about people's like abilities to lead because of who they are, and not because one of them will take it all. And because we divide it into two groups, just like Republican and Democrat, it becomes this very divisive. It always divides the country, no matter what. We do it with schools, we do it with everything. It's black or white. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. We can just decide who's good at what, and then really decide who's gonna lead where. It doesn't have to be this like one person supposed to be the representative for everyone. It sounds ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
I hardly would have any of my friends lead me into every aspect of my life. What, you know, like I would say maybe like this one friend can be really good at leading me in this way, and this other friend would be good at that way. But if I just gave all responsibilities to one friend, I would fucking fail. I would not be led. I would be led astray. And that's how we are being led in countries. Astray.
Exactly. You know, I will say, I don't want to get too deep political in the podcast, because we'll start having listeners drop off in a couple of minutes. But I want to kind of wrap the election thing with this. And I want to say, you know, I don't really care white, black, male, female, who becomes a president. I think my issue with our candidates this year is their age. I'm a little bit of an ageist when it comes to this kind of stuff, because I feel like I don't want a 74-year-old man driving his car on the road, much less running the country. And I think it's really interesting to me that there's a minimum age to run for president, but there's no maximum. And I think I've been very unsure about Biden's competency anyways going into this. And I'm thinking, all right, we're giving this guy a 4-year contract. How's his cognition going to be in a couple of years? And I feel the same way for Trump. Like, these guys are not young.
Right.
And
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. There's words about like, oh, he's going to step down. Kamala Harris is going to take the...
It's hard enough, like, you know, part of the secrets of my companies in the past, why I've been able to kind of work as long as I have, is I always hire a lot of young people, because I try to keep in tune with how young people want to consume entertainment and what they like to see and how they do things, because there's a generation gap between me and young people today. And you can't tell me that a 74-year-old man doesn't have a generation gap with a majority of this country. Like, how can you possibly be thinking on a level of presiding over people that you are so far beyond that, politicians are already living in a different kind of bubble because of their lifestyle for years. So it's hard to see how the young are trying to just navigate this world. And I think that's hard. I think leadership is hard with older people running for office. So I would like to see, obviously we saw a whole lot of white people running for president this year, but it would be nice to see some younger white people getting a shot. And I think my biggest fear is that it's hard to find younger people that don't have some tarnished background. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, just to end it, with it, I do think that it's interesting, because I saw some of his campaign was to talk with a lot of artists, and kind of like make it public, have these like Zoom calls with artists to kind of like make himself young in the artist world, and the young, the voices of right now. And there was this big video, like long video, like of him talking with Cardi B which, you know, I respect. She's she's climbed up and she's done her work, and, you know, she's doing her art. And but, you know, I don't totally agree with the way that she, like, her lyrics and what she promotes and how she talks about her sexuality. I mean, I'm grateful that she's liberated and that she's free and that she enjoys herself, but, you know, the way what she talks about, what she sings about, it's not really what I would like if I was a young teenager and I was listening to those songs and that was my leadership, my sexual leadership or inspiration for me to kind of start sharing myself as a woman. That would be horrible. Like, I would, you know, and honestly, that's what that's where I learned from songs like that. And I learned how to dishonor myself very early on because of those influences. And for like Biden to have this like encouraging, like, you guys are the future, like, thank you so much, you're so smart. It's like, okay, you know, this is really still not serving us. This is not the voices of the future.
Exactly. And I misspoke when I said younger white people. I just meant younger people.
No, yeah, younger people, yeah.
Younger
I mean,
people.
It's happening everywhere, and I feel like we need to be more conscious and mindful.
As we could start to get toward the end of the podcast, I want to use this as a way to kind of like, we're going to make our predictions for next year. And, but I tell you, at the end of this, I think in a way the Democrats thought that people were so frustrated with Trump that they would just walk away with this election. In my life, this is the tightest election I've ever witnessed. This was insane. And
wow.
And it was so close. And there were so many states that were so close. And I think if there hadn't been a strong third party candidate, that Biden would have walked away with a lot more states than he did. That all the third party people really ruined it for him in a lot of places because they took 2% of the vote. And that kind of ruined it for him. So it would have probably been a landslide quicker had there been fewer third party candidates, but it was tight. And what that says is this, and this is the thing that I'm fearful about going into next year. We have a sharply divided country. There were more people that turned out to vote in this election than in history, right? Biden got more votes than any president in history, and Trump got the second most amount of votes in history. And that is frightening because this shows us that we're on this 50-50 balance of complete
of
divide.
Two awarenesses, yes.
Yeah.
Divide.
I mean, this is crazy that these people are so staunchly against one another that we haven't seen a divide this great since the Civil War. Yeah. Tell me where the future is going. Yes. Yeah, tell me where the future goes here, because this is what we have to look at going into the future. Because it used to be people were like, well, Hillary didn't win. Let's just, but then people are restless now. Right. And I think what we're going to see,
especially after the pandemic,
we're going to see more unrest, I believe.
I believe it too. I believe it too.
I think we're looking at a lot of issues going into next year with this virus. They're already kind of laying out these stipulations on who's going to get it. Well, guess what, Elise? Me and you are the last ones that are getting this thing. Unless you're like a first responder or you have, issues with your immunity.
Parties. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I feel so, I'm staying in, I'm wearing my mask, I'm staying calm, but also making a point to like do the things that really bring me joy.
Yeah, I think what we're looking at is, I think we have truly untested vaccines that people are going to get, which could backfire in a way, because this was rushed so quickly that I don't believe we've had enough time to really truly see the damage that could be caused. There's a lot of people that are anti-vaccine people anyways, that are never going to take this in a million years. And I can say that's probably 50% of the country at this point. Yeah. And do you want to be the first one in line down at the YMCA to get this? Because it's hard for me to say. I know. I don't think I would want to be. I don't think I would want to be. And that's the thing, is that how are they going to deliver this? Who's going to get it first? How long is it going to take?
Especially if it's going to be like, is it going to be mandated? Because that's what could start a civil war.
There's been some things that have been frightening me about all of this, and not only the vaccine part, which is going to take years to deliver to everyone, And then we're still going to have mask mandates, and we're still going to have lockdowns, and we're still going to have these hotspots. But I just read something really disturbing the other day about the future of how we're going to fly and how we're going to do things like even purchase concert tickets.
Yeah,
there's going to be a database for Americans that have been immunized with this. And for you to even get a concert ticket, Ticketmaster is going to be able to look at your medical file to see if you've had you had your COVID vaccine, right? Because obviously they can't test everyone that comes to a concert. So the only way this world can survive is to have some sort of national database with information about me and my vaccination. And then the airlines are going to look at this. The countries that are offering visas are going to look at this. So let me get this straight. So I'm going to have to be in this national database to show that I've had a COVID vaccine, right? What's next? What are they going to report on next?
Exactly. I mean, it becomes like Gattaca eventually. It's like Gattaca. Have you seen Gattaca years ago?
Yep.
With
Who's that? Ethan Hawke was in that or someone.
Ethan Hawke. It was all about, it's like AI has taken over, in the sense of like we're using it to like keep everybody in line, and it's just like that. Everybody's everybody's chipped. Everybody, you have access to certain things because of where you rank within your information, what's happening with you, and that's terrifying. Like, what do you mean? I live on this planet. Let me move through the planet if I want to. I don't
even believe this is a conspiracy theory. I think this is a
evolution of
fact that is happening, because what you have is there's been no concerts going on. AEG, Ticketmaster, these companies are hurting, and they're huge companies with huge monopolies. And what do you think they're doing? They've been lobbying the government for the whole year. So the airlines.
I live in the most, like, I live in the music capital of the world, Austin, Texas. There's been no concerts. I mean, when the first festival that got shut down, South by Southwest, in the year, that was a huge realization of what was going to happen for the economy of the city. And it's changed completely. The economy has completely changed. Who knows if those festivals will recover, but more than the festivals is understanding what happens now for big events, and if the safety of big events the idea of safety, right? Because that's what it is you're selling people the idea that if they get a vaccine, they will be safe. But it's like, I always thought about this, and because I'm going to say conspiracy realist instead of theorists. But since I'm a conspiracy realist, I do think that, any person in power will basically scare you so that you give up your power for safety. And that's happened all throughout time forever. In every old story, you can see it of ancient books till now. We keep practicing that. Big governments do it, and we do it all the time. And we even use natural catastrophe for that, to give people their very short options of what they can do to get back to safety. And so I don't know that we can pull back from this. I think that we observe and we individually make better moves.
These companies are essentially paying for this system, and it's happening under your noses, and it won't be until the very last minute, because they'll disguise it and they'll make it look like, oh, this is going to make your travel so much easier, and it's going to be making attending concert. They'll make it look like it's this great consumer service for you. When
that's
in
how the
reality,
article I read was written. The article was written to feel like it was this amazing thing that was happening.
Yeah, and it'll be so convenient for you. But really what you're doing is you're just giving up one more liberty that you had. And once you start to cave on those things, it all falls apart. That's why people say never, never, never give in or meet someone halfway on your Bill of Rights. Because once you start to say, okay, we won't, we can't, I'll give you an example of what I mean. When churches were shut down during the lockdowns, really bothered me, because the essential services should stay open. And I believe that churches were essential services. And for me, to shut down religion was a violation of our Bill of Rights to have religion. If you can do that, if we can't have freedom of religion, what are you going to tell us not to talk next? because that's essentially what happened. People needed to go see their priests. They needed to pray. They needed to have a place to go to. Even the alcoholics couldn't go to their meetings because the churches were shut down. And I feel like that was a huge thing. And
it's
that's
a slow psychological control until you feel totally powerless and you are so afraid that you have to, you give up all of your power for the safety, for the idea of safety, because nobody can keep you safe except for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like people are like, but I want to be able to go to a concert and have my drinks and like go see my friends. And it's like, I don't mind getting a vaccine for that. And it's like, you don't know what's actually happening. And so I think that people are just like, a lot of people live for the moment. We are so distracted by our have-tos, our to-do lists, I have to work to survive, that we look forward to the weekend. We look forward to the small freedoms of like the concert halls and the events that bring us like, just like kind of getting loose and checking out and like drinking and just kind of like not, just connecting with each other in more friendlier, freer ways. And we have a system set up so that can cost us our true freedom. And that's going to be sold to us like that, exactly like that. And it has been already sold to us like that in articles. And it wouldn't surprise me if next year it'll be implemented. I'm just hoping it isn't, because I do think that something like that could create civil war.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that there are definitely some signs that things could certainly get worse. Are you hopeful for next year, or do you feel we're going to be the same as this year, or do you feel are things going to be better, worse, stay the same?
When I
Multiple choice question.
My intuitive feelings is that there will be some drama about all of these shutdowns and all that, but people will already be more awake about this. I don't know. I feel like there's an awareness about the bullshit, and there's an awareness about the facts, and now there's less kind of fear. We know what's going on now. There's a lot of people looking at numbers, and I think that certainly there's fear, but I think that we're way more aware now. So I don't know. I'm definitely more hopeful than I was when this all started.
I hate the term. Well, I hate, I'm a little bit more of a cup is half empty kind of guy.
Okay. I usually am too.
I think the world is going to be on a continual, gradual decline until we're all extinct. I don't think we're going to see any greater days. I think we're going to be I think there's an illusion that we'll have greater days because a new Xbox will come out, or there'll be some new social media platform to take up my time, or, hey, guess what? Oregon legalized mushrooms. This is great. Like, there'll be a million things to distract me from everything going to shit. I believe everything is going to just continue to go to shit.
I do. Okay. So this is my belief, and this is my true belief. I think that the whole system is actually on its way to go to shit. And I'm not talking about like our country. I'm talking about the whole world. Systems are going to collapse.
Totally
completely.
agree.
And we're going to suffer, and a lot more deaths are going to happen. And it's going to feel like an extinction of sorts. But I think it's going to be a reset button. And this is from things I've heard and paying attention to what we've done so far in our lives, in my lifetime alone, but just how we're headed. I do think that in the next 50 years, we're looking into some major decline of our systems and hidden reset buttons. But I don't think it'll end all of us. I think in a sense, it'll potentially, it'll maybe feel like in some ways end of days, end of the world, but we also will see the light at the end of the tunnel for some of us. Some of us who can see that life can be completely different from when we've done it for thousands of years.
Yeah, that's my feeling going into next year, is that we'll be more of this. I hate the term the new normal. I hate it. I hate that term. I don't know who came up with that term. I'd like to punch him in the face, because it's terrible, because it's like, sure, I live my life every day. I'm not living a life of a 10. Like, I'm not like a billionaire and can travel the world, do whatever I want to do. Like, not that that's necessarily the measure of a man, but mostly I'm at a 7, like that's, I feel pretty
freedoms.
Good about my life. Right.
Yeah.
But they want you to say, oh, well, your 4 is the new normal. And it's like, what, like, I don't have to accept this. Like, I don't want my 4 to be like, all right, like,
I completely agree with you.
It's like, yeah, I can't subscribe to that. But anyway, so we got all doom and gloom in this. So welcome to Todd and Elise's Good News Podcast.
Yeah. Hey, at least we still have joy in our hearts. We can still speak with it with laughter. And I mean, honestly, I think that it's back in, like, we, I hear you and I can feel your spirit with all your wisdom and how you wrote your book and how you even ask me questions like who you are as a man. In you is an agency and self-reliance that is what changes systems. And
Yeah.
I feel like we need to just keep tapping into that light within ourselves and keep the conversations and the connections going with people who are able to have these critical conversations, and bring light and bring joy and like really tap into what matters, especially spiritually. You are kind of in a way pioneering by doing something about it, by creating the questions and the platform and the climate for people to converse about this stuff instead of just stay quiet. You created something that makes us dive deep, and you are diving deep, and I think that's what saves the world. I think that's what changes systems. So I do think that you need to go on your road trip. For those of you listening, he did not hear him say he wants to get on a road trip and write his book, his next book. You need to go on that road trip, and you need to keep tapping in and being the man that you are, just like a critical thinker who wants to continue diving deeper and finding the light, brother, because you have it in you. The news are not going to make you happier. You will.
Yeah. It's interesting. Cities and states and governments, these are all, even community, it all serves a purpose.
Yes.
And there's an importance to it, but everything comes down to people. And that's the thing, is that individuals have to have an awareness of their surroundings and what's going on inside them, and they have to communicate. And once you get these people communicating with each other, and you remove the other systems of control that are around you, such as community and states and cities and governments, then you can truly implement the change. Mm-hmm. And that's really the bottom line with it all. What's as we wrap up here, what's next for you? What are you working on these days?
Well, I don't even know if I'm gonna finish it because I'm flaky. Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So I just found out that I am a generator in my human design profile. I don't know if you've ever heard about human design, but if you haven't, I hope next time we talk, you know about it. After we end this conversation, you need to go Google mybodygraph.com and type in your birthday, birth time, and location, and you're gonna find out what your human design profile is, and then read all about it. And basically, it's information that shows you how to live according to your design. And if you are not living according to your design, you are misusing your energy and most likely getting ill. And so I basically found that I'm a generator, which means I'm supposed to be responding. My whole idea and strategy to live and use my energy right in my life is to respond with my sacral, which is second chakra, creative sexual chakra, which means I am not supposed to come up with ideas. I usually don't. I respond to invitations. So somebody comes and they're like, hey, I want you in my team. Does that feel right to you? And I have to say yes or no according to how I feel in my sacral. And I always have a response. So like, if you don't know what your true response is, then you are not supposed to use words. You're supposed to only answer with sounds. For example, do you want to come with me to get a drink? Do you want to go to the park with me later? Mm-hmm. And so making sounds help you understand what your sacral response truly is for you. Then you make it into your mind and you start kind of like analyzing whether it's right for you to go to the park with this person or not. And then you potentially make an action that doesn't match your sacral response. And the more you do the opposite of your sacral response, if that's what you're supposed to be responding from, then the more ill you get. So for example, the guy who was guiding me through mine was like, oh, you're, he was asking me about my health, and he was like, do you deal with this or that? And I was like, oh my God, I do. He goes, well, it's in your chart. You're supposed to, the more you deny what's right for you in your gut, like your gut feeling, like what you want, you truly desire. And in any given moment, from like any invitation you get, from like joining a team, getting a job done, like a chore, what you're going to eat, who you're going to have sex with or when, like anything, any action in your day, if you are not responding with your sacral, you're getting sick. And when he said that, I burst in tears, because I am experiencing a lot of health issues. And when I look back into my entire life, I've shamed myself for wanting to only respond instead of being the idea maker. I'm not an idea maker. I respond to ideas. Join ideas. I join teams, and all I ever want to do is respond. It's the most natural thing to me. And I'm done feeling ashamed of it. And that's what I'm going to do for the next year and for the rest of my life. I'm going to redesign my life so that I respond only from my sacral and I get better.
Great. Well, let's check in with another podcast next year and we'll see how that's going.
That sounds lovely. I might be on the road, like living in a van. I might run into you somewhere.
I know, right? Oh man. Well, Elise, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and I really appreciate it. And let's keep talking.
Thank you so much, Todd. I really enjoy talking with you always, and whether it's text or voice, I love it. You are a great thinker, and I'm very honored.
We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you have it, my interview with Elise Avellan. I hope you enjoyed it. This completes season 1 of the Quest podcast. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, reviewing, giving comments, and asking questions. I'll be back for season 2 next year. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Quest. Please be sure and rate and review this podcast. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Be sure to visit the official website for the International Association of Metatomics at metatomics.org, or find us on social media for other unique content. And make sure to pick up a copy of the book that started a spiritual revolution, Metatomics, The Grand Design, available for sale online and at most major bookstores. Thanks for listening.